What is life like being off birth control? Personal life update. For those of you who have been following me for a while, I posted a few months ago that I got my birth control taken out after 4 years of having it in. The birth control that I was using was Liletta, the IUD, and for those 4 years, a lot of things happened that I'm experiencing differently now that I'm off birth control. So I just wanted to go through that journey, 3 months post not having birth control, to help guide you through as a man what your partner might be experiencing with birth control, without birth control, just so that there's some comfort in the journey. Just to give a little bit of background, I had birth control before the Liletta, but I had the copper IUD. So I had a non-hormonal birth control for 2 years before that. And before that, I had had zero birth control my whole life, except for the depo shot a few times in high school. To be honest, I really didn't know the point and purpose of birth control. I knew that it was to help you not get pregnant, but I took it to control my periods. So I was taking a lot of things that I didn't really understand the consequences of, and nobody really took the time to explain to me the consequences of them. I also came from quite a conservative place in the Midwest, so I wasn't thinking about having babies. I was more like, oh, this shot stops your period? Cool, let's do that. Why wouldn't everybody just do that? So I was putting hormones into my body or manipulating my hormones in a very naive way. And I just want to bring this up because I feel like a lot of us don't get the proper information that we should, and therefore we don't understand how it actually impacts our body, not just in the moment, but in a compound dynamic. And it's unfortunate because I think a lot of people are suffering the long-term consequences of manipulating their bodies in this way. Getting into it, when I got my very first birth control, besides the depo shot in high school, I was 24 years old. So I hadn't had any birth control until 24 years old. And my period at that time was not consistent. I level that out to be being very active, and I'd also had a pretty strong eating disorder from the ages of 18 to 20, and also in my teen years from 14 to like 16. This is important to know because when I finally got on the copper IUD, immediately I had a period, and it was always consistent, always regular, and very, very heavy. This is why a lot of people struggle with the copper IUD, because it causes quite painful periods, quite heavy periods, and some people are copper sensitive, so they don't like that aspect of it either. For me, I was fine with it. I loved it. I had decided at that time that I never wanted children, and this IUD had no hormones, and it was good for 10 years. So in my mind, I'm thinking, this is the best thing to ever happen to me. A period every month is not a bad trade-off, and I felt like it kind of balanced me out because before I didn't really have a period at all, and now I knew exactly when my period was going to come. And at this time, I wasn't necessarily observing my emotions, my hormones, my responses to the environment, but I don't think it actually had an impact on my hormones at that time. Fast forward 2 years later, that IUD ended up moving, so I had to get it replaced. In between getting it replaced with a new IUD, because I didn't want to be fussed about having to remember birth control every day, they put me on a temporary birth control pill. When I was on that pill, that is when I noticed the most immediate hormonal change. I felt crazy, I was emotional, I would lash out at my partner at the time, and we both looked at each other kind of like, why all of a sudden did I go from like a very pretty calm, stable person to someone who was like crying and getting angry and upset at almost nothing? Now, I can't entirely blame all of this on birth control because there was a lot of emotional turmoil going on at that time that also caused a lot of hormonal changes in me. But I do know that after I stopped using the birth control pill and got the next IUD, the craziness balanced out. I wasn't freaking out anymore. So I do place a lot of weight on how that particular birth control impacts your emotions and mood. So the next IUD, as I said, was a hormonal. And I'm going to tell you the only reason that I got the hormonal over the non-hormonal was because this time I was in the US when I got my birth control. The first time I got my birth control, I was in London and it was free. And the US IUD, the copper IUD, is $1,200 versus the non-hormonal I at the Planned Parenthood where I went was sponsored and it was only $75. I'll get into my conspiracy theories at the end of the video. That to me was really bothered me because I said, why is the hormonal one cheaper than the non-hormonal one? Why are they incentivized to change the hormones as opposed to not? Because it also, if you think about someone sponsoring something, why would they sponsor a product that lasts less as long than the other product? The copper IUD now able to last 12 years versus the Liletta or whatever regular hormonal IUD lasting 5 to 7 years. Why would you sponsor the product that's going to last the least amount of time anyway? There's a lot of conspiracies there, but this was at the height of the pandemic, the start of the pandemic. I had just started my business. My partner didn't have a job, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna pay the $75 now, and as soon as I can, I'm gonna switch it out, because even at that time, I had an icky feeling about putting these external hormones in my body. So I'm actually gonna fast forward and talk about this birth control in the aftermath, now that I have been off it for 3 months, almost exactly, because you can't tell with an outside perspective how you're feeling about it when you're inside of the experience. So from the outside looking in, it had the opposite impact on me that the birth control pill had. It's supposed to be a smaller amount of hormones released, I think progesterone, just in the isolated uterus area. Excuse me if I'm getting all this information wrong, because to be honest, I didn't do a bunch of research on this. I'm just giving you my personal opinion that's uneducated. Keep that in mind. It's supposed to be a smaller amount of hormone released and very isolated. So instead of being crazy, emotional, reactive, what I actually found myself to be was a little bit the opposite. What you would deem as more of like masculine energy nowadays, whatever it is. And once again, I can't say I completely attribute that 100% to the birth control, because during that time was also when I started my coaching business. So I was learning a lot about self-regulation, how to handle yourself in relationships, neuroplasticity. I was full on into my studies, practicing them. So I was just being calmer in general. Now that I am 3 months off of the birth control, these are the differences that I notice. My periods have become regular again. So when I was on that birth control, it did to me the same thing that happened before I had the first birth control, which was I had irregular periods, not really any period at all. And the day that I got that IUD out, I basically got a period. And surprisingly enough, the next month to the day that I got that IUD out, I got a period, and it happened to me last month as well. So that's what I'm also expecting for this month. It's kind of cool because it's at the beginning of the month. It's kind of like rent is due, so I always know when it's coming. So that's really actually very cool because I keep track of it in an app, and it makes it so easy to understand what phase my body is going through. And the app helps tell you the hormone levels that you're at, what you can expect as far as symptoms, and it just helps you feel better when you're going through those phases. And I think if you are a couple, it will really help your partner to understand, because some people have huge swings in emotions during these times, and that's when they get negative, that's when they get, really emotional. So it can really help to understand what phase your partner is in, or to communicate that if you're keeping track and it's regular and it's not influenced by outside chemicals. Another thing that happened, and this could just be situational bias, is that I almost felt immediately more feminine. And it's just such an interesting thing to say that, because I'm not trying to play into gender roles or really buy into the masculine feminine energy thing, but there was a shift that happened within me, not outside of me, because I was already dressing very feminine. You can look at all my past videos. I was already doing characteristically feminine things, but it was just an energy that I felt more feminine, more embodied in being a woman. When I was getting off of my birth control, actually one of my biggest fears was, what if I completely change as a person and I no longer resonate with my male clients and my whole business falls apart, essentially, because I built my entire career off of understanding men and making content for men. And so in my mind, I started to wonder, did I just have a successful career because this birth control changed my hormones and made me more like a man? This is really what I felt like and thought. And I was like, holy crap, like, am I going to change into a different person? What if I don't know who I am? It's been 4 years, and it was actually pretty scary. And I'd also read studies where people gained a lot of weight when getting off the birth control. They got acne, or their hair fell out, or, they just shifted personalities entirely. They became depressed. So I had a lot of hesitations when getting off of it, but my gut feeling, my deepest desire was, I need to get this out of me. I need to be all natural. There was a calling that I had to move on to the next step. Also, as soon as I got the birth control out, everything in my life shifted. I mean, it was already shifting, but it was like this was just one more catalyst. So a few days before I got my birth control out, I had just moved to an apartment after traveling to 30 plus countries, being a digital nomad. I settled down in a place, and this was as a last minute resort after I was supposed to move in with my partner at the time. 7 days after I got the birth control out, me and my partner at the time split up. So to say I was having like an identity crisis, an emotional breakdown, rebirthing would be like an understatement. I had to completely rethink everything about my identity, who I was going to be moving forward in a place I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any friends. My one person who I relied on to be my consistent person, was gone. My birth control was gone that had been with me for 4 years. So I was navigating becoming a new person, settling down in a new place, running a business, and doing all of that at the same time. So when it comes to the emotional impact of no longer having the birth control, I can't necessarily really measure it during this time because it was so emotionally stimulating anyway. I do have to say I'm pretty proud of myself because I handle situations pretty well just from all of the training and self-regulation I've done. Not much really stresses me out, but there was definitely some grieving periods. And the really, really beneficial part about having all of these things fall away was the fact that it allowed me to really surrender. And I really actually do attribute a lot of that to no longer having the birth control, because this is one of my conspiracy theories. Part of what I think the birth control does is it numbs the hormone balance, so it kind of numbs your ability to feel deeply or to recognize things at a very surface level. When I had the birth control, I think I put up with a lot of things that I normally wouldn't because I was like emotionally stunted. I never really got super high or super down. It was always kind of like, this is fine, whatever. And I thought that was a good thing. I thought I handled everything very, very well, very neutral. But there's a difference between noting that there are really highs and really lows in life and observing them and working through them, and then just being a neutral person, like no matter what. I hope that makes sense. So when I got my birth control out, I was in a very low place, and it finally allowed me to surrender to where I was able to receive. I had practiced receiving before, but I was still very much in my independent energy, my masculine energy. I can do everything. And this one shift, kind of being left out on my own, allowed me to actually receive from people who wanted to help me, which is a lot of you guys from my fan base, my followers, the people who really love the content. You guys showed up for me in a way that I will forever be grateful for. Oh God, start crying. When you are a creator or a helper, a healer, an influencer, whatever you want to call it. I don't call myself any of that stuff. I just call myself Elise. There is a perspective that you have created for yourself, a persona. And it's really hard to be vulnerable because it's more risk. Like if you've built a business around your image, you do risk a lot by revealing more. And so when I was down and out that day that I got that birth control out, and my partner at the time was not comforting me, was not like, we'll get into that in a different video, but I got so much love and support from everybody who wanted to help me. It started to shift my entire perspective about what I deserved in life. I think it's a little bit hard today as a woman to understand that you can be taken care of, that there are people who want to take care of you, because the narrative has generally been every man for themselves, every woman for themselves, and you have to have your own bank account and your own career, and you don't need no man. And it's not that I ever believed those things to my core of like, oh, I don't need no man, but I did grow up very independent because I couldn't rely on anyone. And I didn't have male figures who were helping me. So when it came to partners, it's not that I rejected them, but it was very hard to receive any kind of care. So I did the 50-50. I did the, I'll pay for this and blah, blah. But like really what I didn't understand was that I was emasculating them. And I think this is something that a lot of men maybe don't understand, and they get really upset at women for. It's not that we don't want to be taken care of. Some of us don't know how, and we feel very fucking guilty about it. And being taken care of is also in part a submissive surrender. It's a surrender to your partner that says, I trust that you're not going to let me down. I trust that you're going to lead me and lead us and lead our family. I trust that you're going to protect us and protect our family. So many men are very angry at women today because they're so independent, when really I think they just don't understand that women don't know how to ask to be taken care of because they've also been shamed for it. Back to the results of the birth control. Just some side things. I'm sure things that you're very curious about. My taste in men has changed. My sexual desires have changed, and sexual pleasure has also changed. So just diving a little bit deeper into that, I do have to say that I have not had a partner since my last partner. I have barely gone on a date since my last partner. Because my standards, due to probably the birth control, but also due to the treatment that I got after me and my ex broke up and all that stuff happened, after being taken care of by so many followers and friends and realizing what love could be instead of settling, my standards just shot way up. I was not with people who treated me well. I was hanging on by ideas and potentials. My desire for men in the looks category changed a bit. Definitely more turned on by more muscular men, masculine men, people who could do just hard labor things became more attractive. This wasn't something I was necessarily not attracted to before, but I think I didn't care about it before. And usually I would say it's because, you attract what you are, but I've always been a person who's worked out. I've been pretty fit. And I think this is another study that I've read, but don't quote me on it, that birth control actually has you more attracted to someone who is similar to your genetic code. And that's actually not good, because when you reproduce offspring, you want someone who is opposite of your genetic code. So my partner that I had chosen before I got on the birth control, but he was still with me when I was on it, was much more fit, much more muscular. He was a gym guy, but his personality wasn't very masculine. He was more of, he wanted to be taken care of. And the next partner was not super fit, like as in muscular, and didn't want to do any of those activities. He was sporty, he was good with that, but he had a very masculine attitude and tone of voice and like very bossy. This is the nicest way that I can describe this shit. But when I got off the birth control, it's just like you recognize, and this is also with studying your relational patterns, right? You recognize the people that you choose, because the man that I thought was super masculine with his attitude and everything like that. He was very masculine in business, but everything about him was more passive. And, you know, I would be kind of leading the ship because I was always demanding something. This is the part where I actually really believe that the hormonal birth control makes you more attracted to people similar to your gene pool, because that was the relationship that mimicked my father. And I had never dated anyone like my dad before. You know, they always say, oh, you date someone like your parents. I had avoided that my entire life until this relationship. And when it ended, I said, holy shit, this is an exact replica of me and my father, which was never something that I wanted, and I did not understand until after it was over. As for sexual desire and that changing, I think everybody is very different when it comes to this. And for me, I've always been, when in relationships, a very sexual person. I like to be intimate with my partner, and when I'm not in a relationship, I don't really get like these urges or whatever. So what I noticed when off of the birth control is that whatever phase lines up in my app with when it says I will probably be more interested in being sexual, I do find that to be true. It's not like I run on the street and I just go meet someone, but you feel this urge to be more connected. You do feel an urge to be intimate, to connect with someone. And I think it's at these times when people feel the urge to reach out to people who are not good for them, past flames, if they have one night stands, if they have situationships. I think these are also one of the reasons that people go back, because your hormones kind of take over your entire mood. I feel grateful that mine aren't necessarily so strong, and that I have, you know, knowledge, and I don't let my emotions rule my actions. So that is different. Who I'm attracted to, like I said, is different. And when I'm in a relationship, I only see that person. I know some people aren't like that. Some people are like, oh, you can think other people are cute. I've never been that way. I think that love alters your desire and attraction. And so for me, when I was in a relationship, I was not thinking anybody else was attractive. I wasn't even looking, like, my ability to desire intimacy from anybody else was just like, it's numb, right? It doesn't happen. Now that I am out of relationship and off of birth control, I see these more muscular men, and I do think, oh my God, that guy's hot. Oh my God, that guy's attractive. Does it mean I want to jump their bones? No. But I do have the attraction back, which I really appreciate because it makes you feel more feminine. As far as the intensity of intimacy, as I got my birth control out, I made a commitment to myself, and I just made a declaration that, like, I'm never getting birth control again. I won't do it. I'm not doing it. Whoever I'm with, I want to be the last person that I'm with. And even though at 24 I had said I'd never ever want children, and it was like my worst fear to get pregnant, when I met my past relationship, even though it did not work out, that person and my love for that person changed my mind. So now my new standard is I will be with the person who once again inspires me to be a mother, and that is the person who I will give intimacy to. So the only way that I can really measure this is by self-pleasure, and I can say that it's more intense, even though it takes longer to get there, for lack of a better term. So other than that, I am really loving life. I'm so glad I made that decision. It was like one of the best decisions I've ever made for myself and my health. Also, these are side notes. I'm not sure what correlates with what, but just as far as physiology, I do feel like I gained a little bit of weight. I'm not sure if that's from coming off birth control or just being a little bit lazier with my diet, because before I was eating rotisserie chicken and rice literally every day for like 2 years. And then when I got here, I was just eating more sweets and going to the gym less and everything like that. But I'm sure there's a little bit of correlation in there. My hair started growing back. I lost a lot of hair within the last like year to 6 months. Once again, don't know if that correlates because I was in a very toxic relationship, and I also have been seeing a change in sleeping patterns. So I do sleep better. Although keep in mind my age factor. I know this is like kind of a unchronological video, but as I've been on birth control for XYZ amount of years, don't forget I'm also aging, and women aging is different than men aging. So I've just hit 30. And when you just hit 30, you know, I'm way too early for menopause, but I've also read that birth control can kind of push you into early onset menopause. That was also one of my biggest fears, is that, holy crap, I'm going to come off this birth control and my body's not going to know how to make a baby. Thankfully, my period has come back every month since I got off. And so I'm not really as worried about that. And I'm really happy that like my hair has started growing back and everything like that. So those are just some side note changes. And just as my opinion on birth control, so you can exit out of the video if you want. This is not based on facts. This is just based on my personal opinion. I don't think that anybody should be on birth control unless you really, really need it. I think that taking birth control as like a leisurely thing and to be experimental is dangerous and unwise. I know there's this whole movement going around where everybody kind of sleeps with everybody and, you know, sexual freedom, but it's not great. I don't know, this is my personal opinion, right? Like, you can say what you want in the comments, but it's like, it's not special. It's not freeing. It's not spiritual. It's dangerous. It's unwise. It's unhealthy. I mean, I have probably an illogical fear of getting an STD. Thank God I have never got one. But it's like, why would you put your health at risk? And, you know, apart from like the birth control thing, like birth control can fail. It's happened to me. And it's just like unwise. And I think when you're taking the risk of changing your hormones and you're taking the risk of like having different emotions and different things happen to your body just so that you can sleep with people who probably don't even value you, I think is crazy. And this isn't to shit on women, and it's not to shit on men either. It's just to like bring awareness and bring some respect back to your body and back to who deserves you. Because since I got off the birth control and got out of that relationship, it's hard for me to even go on a date because of the standards that I have, because I'm never going back on birth control. And I'm not going to be intimate with someone unless I feel like, and we have discussed, our long-term future together. Like, this is likely going to be my husband. We're going to have kids together. We've already talked about it. I feel safe. I feel stable. I feel protected, taken care of. He's on board with what I'm doing. We have this synchronicity, right? Because I just don't believe that you should just give things out and be lackadaisical with your own body and energy because someone is trading fluids with you. Somebody is it's just icky. It's just not good. It's not good for you energetically. You have to be wise about who you're letting into your space. And this is for men too, dude. Men are always bragging about the numbers they have. Why would you give away your energy like that? Why? You make yourself sound easy. You make yourself sound low value, because I can't think of anything more low value than a man who spends all his time hooking up with any woman who wants it. We need to have a different video about standards of men and women. But anyway, guys, that was my birth control video so far. Please let me know any questions that you have or any other YouTube videos you want me to make in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Peace.